So, hello friends, warm welcome to today's seminar. And we are going to discuss today the scientific basis of astrology. Friends, astrology has been a very important part of our country. In fact, astrology is popular all over the world, perhaps, but perhaps in our country, it has got a very special significance. Because even when, the independence was to be given on 15th of August, some astrologer raised the point that that is not the proper time for giving independence to India, and if the independence is given on 15th, then havocs will come. And I mean, basically, it was something which was very much advised against. And then ultimately, it was decided that the independence will be given on the 14th and 15th of night, because as per the Indian traditions, the new day start after the sunrise, while in the Western tradition it start after the 12 in the night. So our country was born like that, but gradually, this astrology, which was of course it's considered to be ancient science, has actually taken roots in the mind of people, and almost now everything is done as per the astrological calculation. Marriages, if you look at it, almost horoscope matching has become a compulsory thing. And then unless the horoscope match, the people don't go for marriages. And then for every auspicious thing, for example, if you want to have a house-breaking ceremony or Graha Pravesh, then again it is very much something which is without consulting the astrologer, people don't do. So astrology has become very important, whether it is a film muhurat or anything, if you look at it. Even now, every festival is having this astrological thing that the Diwali will start from such and such period to such and such period. And this astrology has become a part of life in India. But the question is that, whether astrology has any scientific basis, whether, we should give it the importance which we normally give. So, this is what we are going to discuss today, whether astrology has any scientific basis. So let me start with the presentation now. And if you have any issues, you can, of course, tell me if there is any issues. So let's start with this astrology, whether it is having a scientific basis. And I will request that if there are any questions, you are free to ask. You can always ask the questions as and when you feel like. But let us just start this. I just want to see that everything is 1 second. Because last time some issue has happened. Can you see the screen, please? Are you able to see the PPT screen? Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see, but I think we're hearing an echo of your voice.
Oh, actually, I try to see it by the another mobile phone, so that's why some echo. But anyway, I think the screen is visible, so let's proceed with the session. First of all, actually, what is science? Let us understand the difference between science and pseudoscience, because they are quite similar in nature, and people often confuse one with another. So science is basically a knowledge or a system of knowledge, which covers general truths or operation of the general laws, especially as obtained or tested through the scientific method. So there are scientific method which we are going to discuss, and if the knowledge is acquired through the scientific method, then it is considered to be science. In science, we necessarily have some sort of testable hypothesis, and we have predictions about the universe. So whatever hypothesis the science make, or whatever theory science makes, that should be it should be possible to test that hypothesis, and we should be able to predict as to what is going to happen. That is the necessary thing of science, and I'm going to discuss the scientific method after that. And pseudoscience on the other side is basically a non-science, but it poses as science. So it is something which is not actually a science. It may have some character of science, but actually it is not a science, but it poses or it claims as science. It is actually based on certain beliefs about the words, which are mistakenly regarded as being scientific, based on scientific methods, or it having people claim that it is having the scientific truth. So in the pseudoscience, you will find that some of the steps of science are followed, but not all the steps, and it differs tremendously with the science. So, for example, in the science, we have this six necessary steps. So we start with the observation. Whenever anything has to be done, some observation has to be made. For example, you see that apple is falling, so that's an observation. Then the second step is that you ask the question. The question is that why the apple is falling. That's basically a question. Then there is the third step is basically the hypothesis or the testable explanation. Now here what we do is that we try to test whether, uh, why it is falling. So we make an hypothesis that apple is falling because the earth is applying a force on that. That is a gravitational force. And because of that, the apple is falling. And then we make the basis of a prediction that everything will fall on the ground. And then we test the prediction by experiments. That means we see multiple articles dropped on Earth and try to find out as to how much time it takes or whether everything fall or something goes up also. And then we do a mathematical analysis. And once we do the mathematical analysis, in that case, what happens that we are able to find out that all of them fall with the same acceleration, which we call G, or gravity, force of gravity, that is 9.8 meter per second square. And then ultimately we analyze the result and test the validity of the prediction. And finally, we reach to the conclusion that yes, basically everything falls with this particular, acceleration. And based on that, we derive the universal principle of gravitation also, where we find that there is a formula m1 m2 by r square, as it is said. So that way we find out that every material object attract each other. So this is how the scientific method is developed. Here whatever hypothesis is there, that hypothesis basically has to be tested, and only on testing we can be sure whether that hypothesis is correct when it conforms to the experimental results. Now, all the type of scientific knowledge is basically, we can say that it consists of all the 10 types of features. Of course, these are not the exhaustive list of features, but these are more or less true. The first thing is that all the scientific knowledge has to be objective. That means it should not differ from one person to another. So if there is a law of gravity, or if there is a law of Newton's law, then it has to be same for everybody. There cannot be difference on that, the Hindu law or Muslim's law or Indian law or like that. Second thing is that it should be imperialistic. There should be empiricism. Empiricism basically means that it should be based on data and statistical analysis. That means you should be able to find out what are the parameters, measuring parameters. It should not be subjective. For example, you cannot say it is good or bad, or which has ambiguity in that. It should be concrete. It should be concretized. They should be based on data. It should be testable, because if you are having a hypothesis where you don't have any testable parameters, then it is not a science. For example, God, soul, or rebirth. Now, these are something which cannot be tested. There is no way to test rebirth. There is no way to test soul. So if your principles are based on that, then that cannot be said to be basically a scientific, because it cannot be tested. Then parsimony is another very important principle. That means your law has to be simple, elegant, and concise. Now, if you are having a theory, it's very complex theory. For example, the theories which are given in Upanishad, or even in Gita, or for example in Bible, where you require a lot of elaboration. I mean, it's a complex theory which can have multiple interpretation running into pages and pages on which you can debate. Then that is also not something which is scientific. Then any scientific theory has to be repeatable. That is also very important ingredient, because if the theory is not repeatable, then it is not something which is scientific in nature. So every scientific theory, if you do the experiment 100 times, all the times the experiment has to be, the result has to be same. Then it should be peer reviewed. The necessary thing about the science is that it should be published in the research journal, where people can review that thing and they can test themselves and see whether your findings are correct or not. That is why it is called having a self-correction mechanism, because if there is any issue with the finding, then another person can correct it. So unlike other things like religion or pseudosciences, which has no self-correcting mechanism, the science always has a self-correcting mechanism. Then it is always tentative or provisional, because whatever theory is given, it is only temporary. It is never universal. So tomorrow, if suppose a better theory comes, then that can replace the current theory. It is universal. That means the theory has to be followed by everybody. There cannot be different school of thoughts or a school of philosophy. So it should be universal. And then the final thing is that it should be cumulative. That means no scientific theory originates from a vacuum. There is always some basis and some old theories on which we built one theory over another. So these are basically the 10 scientific principles. If you want to test whether it's a scientific knowledge or not, then all these 10 principles has to be applied. Now, if you have any questions so far, please feel free to ask. If you have any question, let me know if you want to ask on that. Any questions on that? Yes, do you have any questions? Anyone? Any question you want to ask? If there is any question, please feel free to ask. Any questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, now do you think that the scientific theory actually fits into this criteria? Do you think that this astrology fits into this criteria? Okay, so this is why it has been into disputes, and now we will basically discuss, as to what are the evidence or whether it's a scientific or not. So let us now proceed for 1 second. So because a lot of people who claims this astrology to be a science, they actually have very strong belief that it is a science. And whatever argument you give, they will not admit that it is not a science. And so all over the world, many experiments has been carried out to find out whether it is a science or not. So let's go into that and find out ourselves whether it is a science or not. So first of all, how the astrology works. Now, astrology basically is considered to be, the study of the position and movement of the celestial bodies, such as planets and stars, and their supposed influence on the human influence. So, astrology believes that all the planets which are there, the planets have the influence on individual, and there are different schools of astrology, and so far there are, almost more than 80 branches of astrology. Like Jyotish is one of the branches, of Vedic astrology is one of the branches, but there are 80 branches of astrology all over the world, and every astrologer claims that they can provide insight into the personality, behavior, and destiny based on the position of the celestial body at the time of the individual's birth. Now the question is whether astrology is a science or not. Now, friends, the astrology has been practiced for thousands of years, but there has been no empirical evidence to support that it is basically a science. And the scientific community does not consider astrology as a science. There has been numerous studies, and all the studies have established that it is not a science, but actually a pseudoscience. So let's now get into understand some of the studies. One of the very famous study is the Carlston study, which was published in the General Nature, which is rated to be the highest, rated journal in the world. And there, it was 28 astrologers were called, and they were asked to match the profiles of 100 people with their astrological sign. That means they were asked that can you compare that, these 100 people are there, and their astrological signs are there, and based on that, you have to match basically that. And the results basically shown that astrologers were not able to do that, and their guesses were no better than the chance. Then there was another study which is very world famous. It's all available in the Wikipedia also, and you can Google search these studies also. And this was done by National Science Foundation. And there, it was found that this astrology was not supported by any scientific evidence, and it was again considered to be a pseudoscience. Another study which was done by University of Edinburgh, which was done in 2012, and it was published in the Journal Cognitive Psychology. It found that people's belief in astrology are not based on any empirical evidence, but it was based on the cognitive. People believe in astrology because of the cognitive biases and heuristics. Now, heuristics are basically a thumb rule, because these are the rules which we develop on the basis of our experience. So most of the astrologer, they will look at you, they will see the background, and the basis of that, they will make some prediction. Or our cognitive biases, which happens again by virtue of our experience. So this is basically again concluded that there is no scientific basis on that. Then there has been a meta-analysis where 40 studies relating to astrology were pooled, and which consists of 700 astrologers, and 100 birth charts were included in that. In this test, what happened that astrology was the astrologers were asked that about every person they have been given 3 to 5 astrologer charts, and they were asked to correctly predict which one is correct and which one is not correct. And it was found that they were not able to do that, and there has been they were not able to prefer that yes, this particular chart belonged to this particular person. Another study which was done in 2011, it was done, the people who are born within 5 minutes of each other. That means, according to the astrology, their life should go in the same direction, because ultimately your time of birth decides about your destiny. But here again, no effect was found. Another very elaborate study was done by David Boas. He has actually examined the census data of more than 20 million individuals in England and Wales in 2010, and he saw whether the star signs actually correspond to their marriage agreement or not. That means whether the marriages have any correlation with their stars or not. And again, no effect was seen in this case. These are the international studies, but in India also, Narlikar, he has conducted a study which was a double-blind test in Pune, India, and which was published in the journal Current Science in 2009 and Skeptical Inquirer in 2013. Now, here what was done that in this study, it was it was ascertained whether using the astrology, can you differentiate between the people who have less intellectual and development disabilities. That means these people did not have proper intellectual development. And the people who are very intelligent. So, the astrology claims that by looking at the, their time of birth and horoscope, they can predict what they are going to do in future. And here they were asked, okay, these are the 100, horoscope which belong to the people who have mental disabilities, and these are of the intelligent people. Can you differentiate between the two? And so 100 students who are very intelligent, their horoscope was collected, and 100 students who had this intellectual disability, their horoscope were collected, and these astrologers were asked whether they can separate them using their horoscope. But it was found that none of the astrologer was able to correctly classify the chart with accuracy of 70% or better. That means the accuracy of all the astrologers were less than 70%. And the average success rate was 43.13%. That means less than 50%. Even if you give it to a random person who has absolutely no knowledge of astrology, at least 50% predictions will be right. And here it was found that the prediction success rate was just 43.13%, which was less than even the chance. And therefore, it was concluded that astrology is no more accurate than chance, and its predictions were totally unreliable. And this is this research paper is available on this ResearchGate also. The link I have already provided. So the question is that whether astrology is science or not. So friends, all the different type of studies which has been done so far, all the studies have predicted that basically it is not a science. First of all, science cannot have different practices. There is no Newton science, there is no Einstein science. Science is just one. While you have 80 different type of astrology, and even to the same astrologer, I mean, even to the astrologers who are following the same branch of astrology, if you go to them, you will find that they are giving different predictions. And you can find opposite claims made by the different branches of astrology. So no effective prediction has been made under when the predictions was made in the control studies. What happens that most of the astrologers, if they have made a number of predictions, so they will remember all those predictions only, or they will cite those predictions only where their predictions is found to be accurate, or forget about those where their predictions were not found to be accurate, and that is how they generally, convince the people that their predictions are right. Plus, there is no proposed mechanism that explains how the position of stars and planet affect the people and event. I mean, the stars and planets, which are millions of kilometers and miles away, how they can influence the people's, behavior. There is no mechanism and there is no logic which has been given. Another thing is the astrologers do not share their finding on critically evaluate the result of others. So they will not say that, okay, these are the 100 predictions I have made, and these are the predictions which are right, these are the predictions which are wrong. They never share that. And that is how, I mean, why we cannot actually measure how accurate their predictions are. They don't follow the scientific method which we have discussed. And so basically what we can say is that these predictions are no more accurate than chance. So overall, the international consensus is there, and the scientific community believe that astrology is not a science. And but unfortunately, most of the people seems to believe that it is a science, and they follow the astrologer's advice. And in that situation, they miss a lot of opportunity, and they are basically sometimes exploited by the astrologer also. So friends, thank you very much for attending the session. You can subscribe this website, icriticalthinking.org. You can visit that and you can read a lot of articles. And that way you can develop your critical thinking, which will help you find out the truth, and you can protect yourself from victimization.